Hello, guys. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from everywhere you are. I'm Mohsen from Microsoft Zero to Hero. I'm so happy to be here with another great session with another expert. Before to jump and kick off the main session, I wanna share a great news about the next month. We have in July months, .NET months. Actually, we are a lot of session about the Microsoft technology, .NET and C Sharp. Let me see a short video about that. Okay, let me share my slide. Today we have a Lalit here. He wants to talk about the well-architected and framework and Microsoft Azure technology. And the topic is very interesting, specific for all of the guys who want to work with Microsoft Azure and also well-architected framework. As you know, we are part of Microsoft Learn community. Microsoft Learn is a central hub about the Learn content. There are a lot of video, text content, and you can choose your learning path based off your career, based off the certificate, and so on. And yeah, this is a July calendar, Microsoft Zero to Hero July calendar. And as I talked, all of the session is about the Microsoft .NET technology, and you can reserve your seat now. And the last slide is our code of conduct. Be aware of other, be friendly and passionate, be welcoming and respectful, be open to all question and viewpoint in the chat, in the question. Now is the time to add the Lalit on the stage. Hello again. How are you?
I'm doing good, Asin. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you, thank you. As you know, the well-architected framework is very huge, and there are a lot of architects in this framework and how to select. I think in this session you explain how to select and what one, how to select which one is perfect for our solution, you know?
Yes. So, you know, right, Bell Architect framework is a set of guidelines which covers a majority of the Azure
Mhm,
services, including the latest release of AI, Copilot, and all of those things. Right. So,
mhm.
when we talk about Well Architect framework, it does not only fit into Azure, but it covers majority of the Microsoft services as well in terms of observability, security, cost management, and scalability, reliability. So we'll be discussing all of those things in today's
Yeah.
session. And there is a lab basically which we are covering in terms of how you can review your solutions and get the highest score when you design some things for well architect frameworks and how you can do the assessments and all of those things. We'll work on that as well.
Yeah, cool, cool. It's great. Yeah, you can start your session.
Thank you so much. Let me know if you are able to view my screen. Yes.
Let me add. I think. Uh, let's me. Yeah, we have your screen. You can start.
Awesome. So first of all, I would like to thank you. Thanks, Mohsin. First of all, I would like to thanks Zero to Hero community and for the opportunity. And this session is pending for quite long. Would love to explore other options as well. But thank you so much for joining the sessions around the world. And before I, start introducing myself, let's understand why this well architect framework is really required and how does it help, right? As and when if you looked out 10 or 15 years of history and Microsoft and I think 2014 and 15 launched their classic portal and then they went to the resource manager and they keep upgrading in all of those things. Then the pandemic year came, right? Where it's a real shift. People or the organization wanted to digitalize their environment and wanted to move to the cloud, right? That's where it's kicked in because there are a lot of concerns in terms of security, in terms of where my data is getting stored, how the data is getting encrypted, then whether that particular applications which you have built in, it is reliable, scalable. There are a lot of questions in and around which, as a feedback, probably Microsoft has received, and that's where they have come up with some of sort of processes where customer can align those terms and technology based on their requirement. If you looked out a well architect framework, it's a huge frameworks when you talk about an individual policies, individual pillars. They will talk about each and everything. But it is something to an architect or an enterprise architect to select the solutions for their
So,
organization.
sorry, Lalit, I interrupt you. Actually, currently
Okay.
we have your PowerPoint screens, and just if you switch the slide or other thing, we can see.
Yeah. Over to
Actually,
you.
it's not presentation.
Just give me one sec. Let me share the whole system. And I can see the movement of the slides.
Yeah, actually, at the moment, yeah, this is a presentation. Yeah, yeah, that's good. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No problem. So, we were in, how you can select the certain set of rules in the which will best fit to your architecting, designing, and the solutions. With this, I'll start my today's topic on Microsoft Well Architect Framework. Basically, it's not a session, but it's kind of workshops which helps you to, if you wanted to become an architect or if you are already into the architect journey, how you can refine your architect journey and make sure you'll be aligning with the rules and the guidelines of the Well Architect Framework. Because I have seen, even I have been a part of many organizations audit as well, and we do audits for our projects multiple times, right? So Microsoft, the common factor they also looked out your well architect framework assessment, whether you are compliant in that or not. So this is that's pretty important because if something which is part of Microsoft partnership program, right, which you wanted to get the partnership programs or specialize in any category, right? You would need to, with your solutions, you will have to also present the value architect framework assessment. So that's how Microsoft is serious in and around those things. With this, I'm Lalit Rawat, solution architect. I'm a public speaker, author, mentor. I have been, trained more than around 1 million people in and around the world. I have wrote 3 books specifically on Azure. The latest book is the exam prep of AG305. I have also written an Azure Administrator AG104, which has been used by widely Azure administrator to do their day-to-day task, and I have received enough such a great feedbacks. One of the book which I have published as an, if you wanted to crack an Azure administrator interview and question and answer, you will get it on .NET. I think it's free for now. So these two books are on Amazon. You can, if you want, you can grab it. Otherwise, up to you. So this is a small introductions. We run the community in Bangalore, based out of India as well. So and I speaks multiple uh, sessions in and around Microsoft, collaborating with Microsoft SMB and all of those things and delivering sessions. With this note, let's learn what is the today's agenda. So we'll be talking about in terms of well architect framework. We'll be reviewing the well architect frameworks pillar. It's just not the review, but at least we are going in depth in and around of well architect frameworks, each pillar, cost optimizations, operations excellence, performance, reliability, security, and then we'll do the assessments, and then we'll see how we can remediate and what could be the expected outcome to serve. Think as an you are an architect or you wanted to build or design a software and you wanted to deploy, right? So when you design and develop, you might follow the SDLC, software lifecycle development management related steps. But in terms of when you design an architecture, right, what are the things is required, right? There's two characteristics. One is functional requirement. Second one is architecture characteristics. You build any solutions, right, would have to understand what's the applications is doing, where it is sitting, whether it is in on-premises, Azure, how the application's behavior is. You will do some of those assessments, how the connectivity between the databases and all of those things. And then you looked out and architecture characteristics, how that particular applications has been designed, right? How and who are the owners, whether that application is critical or it is mission critical or it is low critical or it is high, and all of those things you get it. And until unless you will not be able to identify how it has been connecting, right, how it has been has the interconnect between multiple services, might be the one application is talking to the hundreds of APIs into the backend. You'll have to look down each and every component, and then you design some things. And if you wanted to build a product, you looked out, right, how your products looks like and how you wanted to build something new out of it. The second part, the majority of the problems, right, where the people get wrong and where the things will does not work out, right, when someone you know in the world is trying to access an application, so they triggers, right. One is institutions, right, because the institutions doesn't know the procedures when they wanted to either build a solutions for cloud or they are migrating. They might be new in some cases, right. Maybe they are using it, but they don't know the procedures and the guidelines, and that's where the first trigger comes in terms of the, or they don't have the well trained architect or solutions, right. So that's the first trigger which comes. The second trigger, there might be a high chances that based on the country, based on the organization, they have some of the regulatory narrowness or the mixed messages in terms of processing of organizations related rules. They, you might have heard out like this has to be in this way, this cannot be changed. Many companies has the rules state away pretty old, but as in when the world is getting moved to the digital technology and move to the AI and the new generated way, right, still many companies has the old way of go, right. So they have couple of regulatory compliance related and all of those governance related issues or the mixed messages which might be impacting the whole solutions. Second one is the professionalism, right? How your production's pressure. Let's say your manager asks that some of those product has to be built. The actual build can be 1 month, but you have been, or your team has been, might be, pressurizing because of XYZ number, saying that you wanted to get that completed in 2 weeks. Right? That is where you do the things in rush and make the mistakes. And majority of us we do the same, right? The third one is the responsibility shifting and inadequate trainings. When you don't have the skilled guys or the skilled people in and around your team, or the skill team doesn't there, when it is shift your responsibility from on premises to Azure or in any cloud technology, right? There is lot of changes. You'll have to understand how things works on Azure. What are the things you have to take care, right? And when you don't understand those responsibilities, you might miss some or another features to it, or you might miss lot of things, the way of designing, the way of solutioning, and all. Or maybe your team hasn't been trained for the specific solutions, for the specific uh, cloud solutions, or probably in Azure, they might not know that what are the things are there, what are the features, what are the services has to be integrated, right? They might left out some of those security governance related stuffs. So that is the one part. The second one, the last one is the attractions and distractions. This is an individual. People might go in terms of let's say distracted with many ways, maybe personal, professional, or financial related stuff, or maybe some different region, right? So when they design some solutions in and around, right, they might have distracted and might put the wrong solutions, right? And then the last one is technical. Maybe the solutions for now which you are designing for, they might be using the clumsy technology that have lot of bugs. They might be differ from the maintenance. I have still seen that people are running applications on pretty old technology, like let's say .NET 3.4 or something like that, and that has to be migrated. So basically, does not have to migrate it. That has to be, you know, transformed to the new technology, right? So we have to work on that. And once this all of those things as an organizations, right, as an individual or technically comes together, the accident will happen. And that's where it is impacting a lot to an organizations, right? So this is the triggers, and any architect has to make sure that if there are any distractions or there are any triggers versus not helping, right, what to do. And that's where this all of those things covered in well architect frameworks. If we go deep dive, it covers all of those things in 5 pillars. Let's discuss in and out, right? So when you wanted to move to your cloud journey, right, the different organizations need a different kind of solutions, and different owners or different departments need a different kind of solutions. Might be the central IT solutions does not fit to a product group or sales group or the marketing group, but the cloud journey is the same for everyone, right? So what you're going to do first, you're going to define your strategy in and around when you are migrating from on premises to Azure. You do the assessments, you define your strategy, how you're going to migrate, you assess the customer environment, right, and all of those things. And what are the waves you have to migrate, right? You'll create wave 1, wave 2, wave 3 based on the low, medium, high, and mission critical applications. You can, give the colors, right? Let's say red, orange, or green, and up to you. So you created those waves. So once your strategy is defined, the way you wanted to migrate and present your solutions to the clients and say, okay, this is a fine grain strategy you wanted to go from there, then you can plan. Basically, in that plan, you're trying and adopting the cloud, right? And you will be defining what could be the business outcome when you plan and deploy to Azure. Then once your planning is ready and approved, then you are ready to process your services and the migrations to Azure. Once you do that, then you would need an adopting, right? In adopt phase, you're trying and adopting the Microsoft services or Azure to migrate or innovate because you have already chosen the cloud platform and trying and migrate. Once the migration is done, you're trying to manage the whole operations and optimizations, let's say cost optimizations and all of those things. And at last, it comes with governance, which is nothing but it's your control and secure, how secure your environment is, how controlled your environment is, right? And who will are need and access, the RBAC control related things, Azure policies, right? Cloud Defender and all of those things comes in this particular picture, right? So in all of those solutions, the landing zone has pretty much importance. So when you design your landing zone, right, the majority part of it's yeah, network. So if you design your network with a good strategy, and then I think majority of the things will follow. And if something missed out there, will be a challenge. We'll discuss landing zone as a part of the next couple of slides as well. So Azure Well-Architected Framework is a set of guidelines for your tenant. Right? So Azure Well-Architected Frameworks has five pillars. One is cost optimizations, security, operations excellency, performance efficiency, and reliability. And what this whole framework covers, where the first part is Azure Advisor, the solutions which you can get it, Azure Advisors, Azure Well Architect Frameworks Review. It provides you the design principles, reference architectures, documentations in and around set of guidelines and the policies. And it also helps in terms of partner, what are the partners is offering, what are the services, whether that particular solutions fits to you or not. Okay. So all of those things will cover up. Let's just look down each pillar. The best practices to drive your workload with the quality that you would get a good number of scores in all of those five pillars. In terms of cost optimizations, operations excellency, performance efficiency, reliability, and security. Right. What does in cost optimizations? When your organizations is decide that you'll have that much of budget, right? Let's say you spending per project $1,000, but someone has created a VM or the services which is not there in the design. Let's say in a design there is a VMs which is have the D series, but someone has by mistaken or wantedly created the E series VMs with the 8 core CPU, but in your design it is 2 core, which means the cost will trigger a high, or there are unknown factors. When you build solutions, when you design or build your environment, there might be no lot of things where you left behind the unutilized disk. A lot of things will be there. So how do you control those costs? How you can utilize Azure hybrid benefit, right? The on-premises licenses of Windows VMs will also work on Azure, right? That is where you can save around 40 to 50% of instance cost. You can use the reservations. You can right size the VMs, shut down the VMs, or if any pest services are flexible, right, or has the lowest cost, you can move that particular applications to pass. In terms of operations excellency, how you can build and design your operation excellency while doing automations, DevOps deployment, monitoring processes, and so on. You can use the Terraform and many other ways of operations excellency to make sure that your solutions have automatically fixed a lot of issues than the manually. Process efficiency, which basically help you to in terms of scaling your solutions. Just give me one sec. So we are talking about in terms of performance efficiency, right? Which is, let's say, I'll give you an example of one of the platform, e-commerce platform. They have yearly sale, and it's called as a Big Billion Day, and they have built out a lot of things, but they are expecting 5 million people to log in at a one time, right? But what happened, whereas around 60 million people, or let's say 20 million people has logged into their application at one shot, and the whole platform went down. And it's not the one time, it's 10 to 20 times in a day, right? So scaling is pretty important because when you build your solutions, you never know when your products or your applications hits how many users or the consumers at what time. So when you set up some of those scaling rules, that when your CPU or when your performance is reaches to certain level, scale in or add in one more VMs to it, or add in one more applications to it, right? Or upgrade this kind of solutions. So scaling is really really good factor when you define your efficiency, and that's where the performance comes into the picture, and how you're going to monitor this whole solutions. And when the traffic is down, when the user is less, it will automatically reduce the instances, right? That's where you can save the cost. Then whether your application is reliable or not, so how you are going to define the requirement testings, the simulations, right? Uh, the how you are continuously monitoring your applications, right? In case of disaster recovery, whether your applications is available or not. We can take an example of, let's say, Microsoft Store, right? When Microsoft launched a product, let's say 10 million people wanted to buy a new laptop, which is called as a Microsoft Surface AI Copilot. If they don't have, and in the same time, let's say there is a disaster, something is happening to the environment, the whole application is down. That will impact to an image, right? So I'm just giving an example. This is impact an image for the specific company, or you can look down any solutions with the latest case which has happened, right? In terms of Windows 8 related stuffs and any other cases, whether it's that particular mistake has been done by a specific organization or not, but as and when an organization associated to a specific solutions, it will impact to the whole brand, right? Whomsoever the mistake is, but this is impacting a whole brand, right? So that's where people looked out whether your application is reliable or not, and then how your application is secure, who all are can log into your applications, management of your infrastructure, your application security, whether your data is encrypted or you are following the security governance, you are meeting with compliance. If you have a healthcare related solutions, whether you are meeting the HIPAA compliance, the government solutions, whether you're meeting a specific government related stuffs or not. So all of those things comes into the picture when you talk about a well architect frameworks. Then what are the best practices which drives? I think it's the same. Sorry. Then if you are talk about in terms of development workload, right? So you might have three or four environment, which is QA, dev, and prod. In our case, in a QA, you might use Azure dev subscriptions, where all the testing and all the things which you are doing it, you will do, right? Then when it is moved to the productions, you might be using really, highly skilled resources in terms of you might be using the premium disk, the premium tier for your applications. When we talk about in terms of securing applications, right, you might use a lot of solutions in terms of app security, cloud defender, and all of those things. What does it makes one difference? Whereas you are whenever you are developing and solutions and approaching it right, that has a little lower cost to it. And as it is into the restricted environment, don't need to make it public, or if you wanted to do it, but you're doing just for the testing work or developing something in a small scale. You don't need a heavy resources. That's where you can save some cost. But when it comes to your mission critical workload, that will increase your cost like anything, because that's where your businesses is making the decisions. The workload is increasing, the people are coming and they're working on that, right? If anything is goes wrong, it directly impact to a brand. Then securing, it will also increase because you will be adding couple more services to your solutions in terms of security, which that's cost you an additional. But brand is really really important, the product is really really important to secure. If someone try, or the cyber attackers try and log into your applications, and might have disrupt the part of it, I would say not the whole applications, but still your whatsoever the solutions you have, but still it will take at least 10 to 20 minutes to recover, of let's say 5 minutes to recover, to build the whole solutions from new. Let's say it is taking just 5 to 10 minutes, but your application will be down for 10 minutes, right? So that should not happen, because each and everything's when you do, that will impact a lot. Then if you are building an architect systems, there is a responsibility of each the multiple peoples. If we talk about in terms of platform foundations, when you select that you wanted to build an applications on Azure, so how you are planning in doing the foundational design to operate and monitor your specific applications. Let's say you build out landing zone related stuffs and all of those things, the foundations. Then you enable the features for that particular platform to make sure you have the capabilities, and you will enable the solutions for security, reliability, operability, and the performance. At last, you will release your applications for the customer so customer can use. And as we have already covered majority of the things on platform foundations and platform features that will secure our solutions, that well, you know then we are going and getting releasing for the applications for end user to make sure they can use that applications, and that's how this responsibility is being shared across multiple users. Then if we talk about the workshops, we'll discuss in terms of discover, analyze, prioritize, and optimize. This four pillar, and the first three pillar is review, and the last one is for remediate and how we can optimize. And when you uh, think in this way, the first slide which I have, the second or third slide which I presented around the migrations, migrating or planning to move to Azure, it is almost similar to that. So, what could be your architect, or what could be your the teams being involved, or individual uh, team member will be involved. When you build a solutions, there would be a solutions owner or solution architect, cloud architect, network architect, data architect, security, DevOps, project manager. And apart from that, if you're building some of the solutions in terms of AI, then AI architect. So if you're building an application, then application architect, based on the requirement, based on the things, and will change a lot. And what could be the key outcome which you are trying and identifying, right? When you build a solutions, first of all, you'll have to identify what are the design and implementation risk of the applications. Let's say if it is critical applications that you have to move live, your client says you don't have time. I want that applications to move live. It should run an on premises as well as an Azure, but you have to define a strategy. This is pretty critical. At least you would need a 5 to 10 minutes of time, right, to a network switchover. But if you have the zero time and you wanted to migrate the particular applications, you have to define a lot of different strategy, right? And that was a lot of risk. Let's say you are modernizing an applications which code is written in 2000, let's say 1999, and you are going and migrating that applications to Azure or transforming that applications to Azure. That is a lot of risk, right? So you'll have to cover, when you design a solution, you have to cover all of those things, and then you propose an actionable items or prioritize the recommendations based on the priority, which is P0. Maybe like you'll have to sort it right now, whereas P1 would be a strong recommendations, but that can be improved as and when you moved after the short-term remediations. Then P2 can be a long-term sustainability and recommendations which you have to fix it. So when you do the assessments, you capture the findings, associate any recommendations in a well-architected frameworks, right? You looked out whether that applications has this or not, and then when you put that data particular to the well-architected framework, it just give you the review, right, and provide the guidelines for implementation for the short-term critical recommendations, and all of those things will comes into the picture. So how do you do the well-architected frameworks discovery? So you can use the well-architected frameworks online. There is a tool. I'll ping you the link as well, which helps and client to adopt cloud with maturity. It understands your workload profile, whether that complete customer applications, apps are internal applications or there is an IoT solutions. You'll have to review the customer that has an architect diagrams, or you'll have Azure resources walkthrough, and all of those things will cover into this. So when you work of Bell Architect frameworks, it gives you whether whatever the based on your answer, whether your applications or pillar, which is there in terms of cost optimizations, excellence, operations, performance excellence, efficiency, reliability, and the security, whether they are in excellent, moderate, or what kind of the if you looked out this particular things, whether which conditions they are in, right? And what's the score you will have. And after that, it will also give you the recommendations that what are the actions you have to be needed to make sure you rightly define your strategy. Then let's me walk through in terms of well architect frameworks how your workloads and things will work. So if I talk about the well well architect frameworks, we just logged into the learn.microsoft.com/azure it will also pillars. And then what we need to do is we'll have to come into the assessment tools. When I click on assessment tools, it asks me to sign in. If you don't sign in, it won't allow you to do the assessments. So once you sign in, it will not only you can do the well architect framework review versus the whole solutions, but if you wanted to choose any of the solutions, such as DevOps capabilities assessment, mission critical applications, well architect framework review, landing zone related, developer, data science, or go live well architect frameworks, and you can look out, couple of example which they have it. So this is the end-to-end document which shows how you are performing in terms of following the guidelines in terms of what you have implemented in your solutions. So with this, I'll just start this particular assessments here. So what I'm going to do is, as a well architect frameworks, which covers all the five R base pillar, then it will ask me like what kind of the workload you wanted to evaluate. It's the next set of questions. Whether I wanted to do in terms of core for machine learning, SAP on Azure and stack. I would say let's do it core. And that which pillar you wanted to evaluate. So I would say let's do it in terms of security. If I select all of those, it will add me in lot of questions. So just for the lab purpose, I'll just add it for the security. Or I can add for the cost optimization, which has lesser in cost, lesser in number. When I just say next, and you can add the notes at any time if you find out anything. Now they have a lot of questions whether how do you create a culture of financial responsibilities, and now you have to select the answer. Did you communicate the financial expectations? Did you make the budget or workload cost transparency? Yes, we follow this. And then how does your cost modeling will be? So I'll just quickly, put it some two, three answer and show you the results for all those questions. So whether you have cost data for analysis, how you are making sure you are regular reviewing the report, stakeholder related questions are there, whether how you are governing your spending, and whether you have implemented release gate or code of standardizations in terms of deployment. Did you get that best rate for your provider? and how you are going to align in terms of optimizing your workload, then what are the each workload environment is. Like, I'm just quickly selecting some of those solutions because we are having another 15 minutes, and then and all of those I'll just say no, none of the above. Let's look out how the solutions and the review report comes into the picture. So that's how I just going with the last questions where it will says how do you evaluate the resource. So how do you evaluate the resources consolidations? There are some answers. I'll say none, and then it will ask me to give you the guidelines. And if you looked out the results, I'm into the critical space, then even I did not get the moderate answer, 29 out of 100. Now, it will also give you the recommendations, what you need to do. If we talk about optimizing cloud licensing, it's give you a proper guidelines, what you need to do. You can use the hybrid related stuffs, negotiate, or you can use dev and practicing volume discounts. Azure gives you a lot of benefit. You can use Azure reservations, Azure saving plans, and you can use the license mobility or license agreement. You can have the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement or Customer Agreement or Open Volume Program. Based on like it will give you lot of things. You don't have to go through all the documents. Just look down what are the functionality you have to focus, right? So you have all these recommendations here, and then you can also export this particular report into the CSV file for your reference. So here is all, as well as what is your score, and then what are the places you have to work and how you can optimize. And these are the links as well for you to make sure that you'll have all the solutions in place. Maybe I'm not sure if I can show you the compact view, but this is some things which does it help you and all the way to get and do the assessment. So once you do the discovery and assessments with you, right, you will be reviewing the current state of your resources, walking through the portal to the customers, gathering the informations, using the useful links. Then you can discover the workload profile, like what are the key productions workloads you'll have, how the production workload has been deployed, operated, or measured or monitored, whether you have a CSO or CO dashboards, which gives you the clear picture of costings, whether you have any issues or experience in and around for degrading your applications or platform services or anything which is needed. Then some of those tools which help you to analyze. One is Azure Advisor, and there's have CCO dashboards, and few other tools are there, which is built by Microsoft, built by Microsoft partners, and Azure Advisor and Well-Architect tool as used by Microsoft majorly. So I use Azure Advisor, and then basically Azure Advisors help in terms of well-architected frameworks. So I'll show you how Azure Advisors works. We can log into my portal. I've already not sure, they're a bit slow today. That's fine. Let it become. In the meanwhile, we'll walk out on PPTs. So these are the five well-architected frameworks pillar which we are discussing from last 45 minutes. So in terms of you get that best guidelines to improve the quality of your workload based on this. Then when you talk about cost optimizations, keep within the cost constraint when you design some solutions. Aim to the scalable cost, pay for your consumptions, right sizing your resources, optimize, and all of those things. We'll have design for operations, automations, testing, self deployment monitoring. If we talk about performance efficiency, then you can design and perform and test, monitor, optimize, and you'll have the capacity reservations as well. Uh, if you wanted to go with reserve instances and all of those things, or when we deploy an SAP solutions, we should have some of those capacity reservations. Then define the requirement for your reliability solutions, which also covers your uh, disaster recovery, right? Backup and disaster recovery. If you talk about security, how you are going and designing your security solutions and building a comprehensive strategy to make sure your solutions align to this particular stuff. And some of those overcoming from those workload inherited when you don't put a monitoring on the cost uses, right? You don't understand, or you are unclear in terms of any of the structure or resources. You don't plan your budget and all of those things. You don't follow the adoptions of the cloud related stuff. These things will be overburdens and they will compromise to your uh, applications or the design which you do, or it impact a lot basically when you will not include the rapid issues which you have identified in your solutions, the deployment automations, the absence of communications mechanism, and majority of the times when you have set up the unclear expectations and the business outcome, the solutions will not work. And if you don't have any visibility in terms of any events or any issues comes to your solutions, then if you don't have the monitoring or current workload in terms of health monitoring or scaling, or if you don't have the guidelines how this infrastructure has been supported, may impact your efficiency. In terms of reliability, if you don't set up your BCDR plan or data backup, or you don't follow the architecture related steps or design, that is nowhere your solutions is reliable. Because if anything goes wrong into the world, and nowadays if you look down, the world is so uh, I don't want it to use that word, but you look down the news and you'll see something is happening somewhere, right? It's just not good for the human. But this can also happen to our applications, right? So it's just kind of something is goes wrong with the applications. What will happen? Your applications will be hold down, And if you don't have the backup, you will not be able to back up. Someone try and hack your applications, corrupt the data, you will not be able to back up. You will not be able to recover your applications. Then, when you are talking about security, if you don't have any security mechanism, authentications, authorizations, that can be easily cached by. And if you talk about one more solutions, which is zero trust network solutions, right, where they'll say in terms of security you should have the zero trust. So each and every layer will have the particular solutions which says that you're securing your networks and everything. Then if we talk about BAF pillar in terms of cost optimizations, right, how we can design cost effective solutions. So they have around, I think, 6 pointers which we have already discussed into the previous slides, but just will take as an overview. The cost management. You always start with the advisor recommendations, have the reservations for at least for 12 months if it is fits to your solutions, but again depend to your organizations and the management decisions. You do the cost analysis, review the budget and alert configurations, identify how much it is causing you an operational cost. Sizing and planning, you could resize based on the alerting, based on the mechanism of that particular VM and the SKU does not using that whole resources, you can resize those VM and save some cost. And they can utilize some of those pattern, auto shutdown, scaling or spot. You can use the different kind of reservations, licenses, or the subscriptions. Let's say you bought a reservation instances for specific uh, VMs or specific applications, but whenever you are doing testing and development, you should just dev and test versus prod. You'll have the hybrid licenses benefit as well. If you have unused resources, get that deleted. Don't put it in your Azure infrastructure, but majority of the times I have seen people has backup retentions, though their company policy is to just have the 1 year or 2 year or 3 year of retentions, they have 10 years of retentions in Azure. That you don't do it because if you do the retentions, anyways, you are putting the data and I, I have seen the cost is more than your backup solutions. So the retention cost is more than your backup solutions, right? Anyways, you will be regularly backing up, so the latest backup will be available. So if your company has to follow certain guidelines of your governance, keep it 1 year or 2 years of data, not more than that. But again, it depend based on your organization's rules and the rules and the regulations, what kind of the governance they wanted to set up. And even your cost differ in terms of when you select the regions, egress traffic, VNet, peering, disk performance, replications, if you're doing in content cache as well. Then at final, if you making any the architectural changes, that will also cost to your workers, your applications caching, and any of those things. Because if you wanted to migrate Azure infrastructure to NPaaS, right, it will need certain efforts to be there, and then if it is meets your requirements, so you're making any changes uh, when your application is not working, that will obviously increase the bit of cost. We talk about in terms of reservations. These are the few services which is available for reservations, but there are many other services. Once I'll log into the portal, I can show you those services as well. Then, if you talk about the BAF pillar, so when you wanted to start your businesses, or when you go and assess your reliability pillar, I'll have to understand first question is whether how your application is critical. What would happen if that applications went down? If there is a custom solutions or there is a solution provider, does that applications supports or do we have that vendor requirement, or that application is supported by specific vendor? Do we have an SLA target, or whether the customer does the risk analysis that application which we're going to migrate, right? So this is the SLA where Microsoft says that it is 99% for majority of the applications, which means your applications will be down in a year 3.65 days. If you choose a 99.995, which means in a year your applications will be down for 5.26 minutes. But that's again based on your applications, or same way you'll have 99.9, 99.95, 99.99, and accordingly if you looked out 8.76 hours, 4.38 hours, 52.56 minutes. So this is the whole SLA that has been defined for Azure services. This does not mean that you should using this particular SLA and define your SLA. Why I'm saying, because let's say you have an web applications and the SQL databases, whereas web applications at 99.95 and SQL database has 99.99 SLA. If we calculate for service A and B, you will still be achieving 99.94% SLA. And let's add to one more layer. Whereas we have added the queue into the next solutions, web apps, SQL DB, and queue will have 99.95, 99.99, and 99.9. This is the SLA which has been given by Microsoft. When you calculate all of those things, it comes to 99.95%. Right? Whereas if you look at 99.95%, which is 4.38 hours. But the more complex your solutions, more services. So each services has a different SLA, and this is the mechanism how you can calculate the SLA based on of your solutions. Then, if we talk about reliability pillar will have architecture review. You have to identify the type of architecture you are looking at, the single point of failure, how you can calculate and composite of your solutions, how we are going to discuss in terms of redundancies, whether you are using load balancing mechanism, what kind of the application you have, stateless or stateful, whether you're changing any engineering, right? And discuss the applications level resiliencies. Have you implemented your HR related stuffs? Can these applications need and high availability? Cost versus resiliencies trade-off, the data residencies. Do you have a BCDR mechanism or not? Detections and response systems, monitoring and alerting and traffic routing configurations are there. Are you, following any retry, fallback, or timeout, or any circuit breaker for your design patterns, whether you have defined the RTO and RPO of your applications. So all of those things comes into the picture, and these are the important point which I would say you'll have to put. And then a BEF performance pillar where an application says, sometimes user says that the application is slow, but when they says your application is slow, why it is slow? Whether it is a user internet is not functioning properly, or it's your. So it's always not your mistakes when you design it, but you'll have to also look out in terms of user prospects, not at the metrics prospects. So when you design your solutions, you'll have to always think, if you are the users, what kind of the solutions you needed. So have this particular prospects, not just the solutions and the component, and put the metrics that this is some things which we want, right? So this is the performance pillar, and then when you doing some of those changes in terms of performance, the majority of performance defined by your VM sizes or your application sizes, in what kind of the SKU you are taking, disk IOPS, throughputs, CPU, what is the response time, and how your resources being hogging, the network bandwidth, latency, the network path, whether you're using caching solutions, CDN, compressions, what kind of the scaling you will be doing, vertical or horizontal, what kind of the solutions you deploy, whether it's multi-geo deployment or scale as an independent, what kind of the backing services or application design or data sharing you have. This is also cause a performance because when you have the databases and if the one query is taking 1 hour to get that completed, there's something, you know, something is there, right? So you'll have to analysis your query, optimize your query. So it does not mean that only the one component can kill your performance, but there are multiple factors and you'll have to look down when you design a solutions for it. If you talk about business, if you talk about well architect frameworks for the security, will have security is one of the important parts. That is one. So when you have the security, you will get, you have the confidentiality, integrity, availability, insurance against any of the attacks, right? And you'll make sure it also help your businesses, right? So basically, security is a complex systems, right? And depends on like how you're going and understanding in terms of business context, in terms of social context and technical context. So when you design a solutions, you'll have to look down all of those three aspects, that how your security or solutions will be secure and this part. So this is a BAF pillar where the physical security, which basically says it's a Microsoft responsibilities, but in each parameters you also have to put your securities. You have to define the policies and access, the parameters, the network, PM compute, whether your disk is enabled, who all are getting access, applications and data as well. So we looked out in terms of security pillar. We'll have identify identity, how your authentications and authorizations, or sorry, how your authentication and authorizations happening in your applications and sources. What are the protocol you are using? Where you're using MFA or managed identity? Have you defined the role-based access control? How your access management is defined, whether you are giving an access to individual users and all the subscriptions, or creating a security group for centralized management of access, how you're controlling your Azure resources, whether your disk is encrypted or your application is encrypted, whether how you're defining your networks, NSG, Westian, do you have an end-to-end encryptions, you have BAF or firewall, whether you have keys and secrets, you're using Key Vault or not, and tools and processes, how you are monitoring the vulnerability, the security vulnerability. Do you have any inbuilt SIM solutions like Microsoft Central, Cloud Defender, or any third party solutions, right? What are the patches and configurations management or the endpoint protections you have? So this all of those things you do, right? How you are managing your development right life cycles, whether you are scanning your whole code and vulnerability assessments, the deployment, OAuth or OpenID related stuff. So you can always follow the security benchmarks. So these are the links I can ping you. And then it lastly comes with operations excellency, where majority of how your end-to-end operations works. When you do the monitoring, you'll have the metrics, logs, dashboarding. If you talk about resources, how you're going to optimize the resources, whether you follow the correct naming conventions, subscriptions, or management group, whether you have a deployment strategy, how you can define your automations tool, rollback processes, and all of those things. And the last is how you're defining your testings, whether you're using automations to define and deliver everything, right? So you're using Terraform, or you're using DevOps solutions for your applications, that is pretty much and help you and increase your efficiency. At last is BCDR, right, where you have defined the backup strategy, DR drills. They have an app prioritizations, RPU and RTO, and all of those things, right? So it's an IT department is saying I was just wondering to have a disaster recovery plan, and the other person saying no. If something is goes wrong, you will not be able to recover your data. That is for sure. So those are some things where you can define your priorities in terms of one, two, three, and four. What's important or immediate versus what is your less urgent, right? Which isn't important. So once you define this, and then in the next step, you can have the insight in design where you can organize and analyze your informations. You can design the solutions, do the scoping, then initializations. Then you can have the 1 week for discovery and insight, then design, implement a sprint, and then go on. And it also impact your based on the impact and success metrics. You have to define that whether you would need a disruptions in production environment, or you would have the people and resources in the organization that needs to be involved, and what are the risks which you have identified and that has to be implemented or mitigated in terms of factors. And this is just a summary, and this could be your remediation steps. You review the solutions, backups, communicate to the stakeholders, fix the test, document it, and validate, and then you can go. So before any changes, you always have things in your things. You always backup and have that risk and impact fully documented. If you have a rollback processes, it's always ready, and then you can communicate the ratio metrics, business teams, users, and all of those things, and then you can remediate that particular solutions. And thank you. But I'll just quickly show you was Azure Advisor. If you looked out the Azure Advisor, it has five pillar: cost, security, reliability, operations excellence, and performance. So I'm good at performance. What if you looked out in terms of costing? So it's giving me like three VMs, which is costing me 13 30,000 USD, right? It gives me that particular VM's name, as well as it is asking me to do the reservations for this. So if I say that I wanted to do the reservations, it will also tell how much cost will I save. So it's saying you might, potentially cost, you might save, I think, sorry, I misinterpreted. Potentially, this much the cost you can save. So, right sizing this particular VMs, it will give you the more details. Similarly, to you will looked out sometime to get that details. But if you looked out the other pillar, let's say security. Security also has the lot of recommendations to say whether your disk is encrypted or not, and all of those things when you talk about in terms of reliability and performance. And then at last you can do the monitoring and alerting. You can configure whenever you have any recommendations, so you can do that. But I would say, like, in the interest of the times, as this is taking longer time, I would So thank you so much for joining this sessions. And you wanted to connect with me, you can connect with me on my LinkedIn. Probably I'll just ping you the link there. So you can connect with me, but you have any questions, any queries, anything that is, you can ping me on this, or you can reach out to Zero to Hero community, where they can, where they will, they just put the questions to me, and I can probably help you out with this.
Thank you, Lalit. It's a very great session.
So
Guys, if yeah, do you hear me?
thank you, Mosim, for the opportunity.
Thank you again. Guys, if you have a question, you can ask your question on the chat comment. And also, Lalit shared his LinkedIn. If you have any question in the future, you can connect to Lalit and ask your question. It seems there is no question on the chat and comments. Yeah, we can close this session. Thank you
Okay.
again, Lalit.
Thank you so much, Mosin, and thanks, Zero to Hero community, for the opportunity. Nice.
Thank you for being here. Bye bye, guys.